The jobs data just keeps getting worse. The consumer is bleeding out, and there seems to be no hope left, except for if there's going to be these rate cuts that will miraculously save everything. But will they? That is the real question. Did the Fed move too slow? And will we see a jobs crisis? We're going to get into all of this. But first, let's get into one of the biggest jobs posting sites seeing a huge fall from grace with a negative 8% year over year jobs posting for the week ending in September 12th, marking the second lowest since February of 21. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, might have short term memory loss, but February 2021, there wasn't the stimmy checks in just yet, and there was a lot of things just absolutely still shut down and not even moving. So seeing that is quite alarming to say at very least. So postings have now declined for 3 straight years, where they peaked in 22. Of course, you saw everybody rehiring, and kind of the great migration is what everybody called it during that time period. But now we are seeing that just keep on going down to essentially almost pre-pandemic levels. So now they're only 4% over above. Their currently number of available vacancies only 4.3 above pre-pandemic levels. This suggests that the BLS jobs opening data will likely continue to trend lower, all as the number of unemployed Americans now exceed the available jobs for the first time since April 2021. So this weakness is continuing to spread. And on top of it, we're getting a lot of rising unemployment. So the consumer essentially makes the world go round, right? That's what they say. Money makes the world go round. Well, if consumers don't have money to spend, that is not a good sign at all, to say the very least, folks. So we have to keep a very close eye on how this jobs data goes, because it's a good indicator on just how everything is going. So on top of that, the slowing job growth the U.S. will add fewer jobs than expected in recent months with negative job growth. And the unemployment is 4.3% in August, a significant increase in the long-term unemployment as well, with millions out of work for over 27 weeks. Now, this is what is even more alarming, is this tweet right here, where 25.7% of unemployed Americans have been out of work for 27 plus weeks. Now, this is basically saying a quarter of the unemployed Americans have been out of work for nearly half a year. So nearly 1 million fewer jobs exist than first reported, as we all know, because I've been covering it on this channel. So make sure you guys are subscribing for me. Help me get to 500. I'm almost there. And on top of that, we are seeing job seekers send out hundreds of resumes with no replies. Now, with these job boards, it essentially makes it so much easier to now apply for jobs. But the big negative coming out of all of this is that it's easier to post jobs and easier to not reply and easier to apply. So the amount of likely candidates and the likelihood that you're going to get a job from a posting is down significantly. And that'll keep going down as we're seeing the consumer bleed out, so to speak. So while Americans can't find work, DC keeps handing out H-1B1s protection outsourcing. So now, obviously, we saw that this had halted the other day, but what we're seeing is all of these headlines: job seekers fear awful data about the labor market. We're seeing some of the most terrible labor market, job market data that there is out there. And it's not just privy to the United States. The UK is also seeing a huge job market cut. So it's not just the United States and everybody saying, oh, you know what, the US is in a bad spot. It is multiple countries around the world are feeling the pain of all of this. So as I'm stating here, we have to watch the jobs data very closely, because the number one economy in the world, spending economy, is seeing a huge downfall of all this. But the UK, private sector vacancies fell 28%, with 50,000 jobs less in the past 3 months. And the budget is raising the national insurance contributions by 1.2 points. So that means the public sector employment is growing, but everybody is leaving the government jobs, and the overall UK employment remains steady, but unemployment is rising because so many people are coming in. So the unemployment in the UK is now at 4.9%. And now we see a few different sectors essentially holding up the United States economy. I mean, if you look at it, the top 10%, they're spending like nobody's business, and tech is keeping us all afloat as it seems right now, where, without tech spending, the US economy would technically be in a recession already. US real GDP growth year over year would be negative or close to zero without tech spending. So it's interesting because all of these tech sectors that we look at, it's almost as a negative because everybody says, oh, the tech sector is boom and bust. We're not going to see any of the positive layover effects of all of this. But exclude tech spending, we're in for some hurting here, folks. And the jobs data revisions, as I've stated multiple times here, how do just a million jobs magically disappear? You really can't make that up. It's a huge problem. So you got to keep looking at all of that and saying, okay, what is the underlying issue here? How can we continue to, make sure that the economy is not going to go bust, so to speak, here, right? We have to keep on looking at all of this and say, hey, is it housing? Because this is where all of these things are essentially connected. I know this is a tweet from Andrew Tate, so take for it what you will, but housing prices are crashing. The Ponzi has collapsed. The youth is buying crypto with their spare money. Of course, I'm a Bitcoin only guy, but nobody is saving for a deposit on a mortgage to buy over a price boomer jackpot. Everybody hates banks. Houses are too expensive. Bitcoin is solution. That seems to be the overriding narrative here. And home builders, everybody's saying it's a supply and demand issue. We need to lower rates so home builders can now see a big giant boom and decide, oh, you know what? I'm going to be buying or building more and more houses. Not so fast, my friend, because I think at the end of the day, when you look at all of this, the underlying data is showing some cracks, to say the very least, almost some big negatives. These negatives include housing not doing as well, and the jobs data, the postings from all of these different websites going down significantly. So as we see housing start to bleed out and the jobs data start to go down, these home builders seeing these houses crash. Now, this is from America's second biggest home builder saying this. So this is not just, somebody going driving the street, somebody just looking at all this. This is all of these guys saying, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, we're looking at how big this could be, a potential housing crash. The company signaled that it is ready to abandon its strategy and prioritize profits instead, a shift that would likely negatively impact the average home buyer who benefit from recent inventory glut across the country, especially in the Sun Belt. Well, Florida is seeing a slight housing recovery, is what they're calling it. So this recovery is starting to ramp up oh so slightly. And if we see another rate cut, will that continue to push along? I mean, there's a 94.1% chance as of today that we cut 25 basis points. So that's a start, right? 25 basis points. But 97.892 start to rise up. Are we going to see it crack that 98 to get a little bit, a little bit above and close to that 100 mark? Are we going to see that with the way that, stocks are pumping? We're getting stocks started essentially just evening out over around its all-time high. We haven't seen it above the 6,700 mark. I made that call here on this channel and it was wrong. Seems like that is not going to happen anytime soon. But when we see these jobs reports come out and be so negative, you have to wonder, how is this going to continue to look at, the overall market? Because if you look at the weekly job report, job counts keeps going down. Location trends, Philadelphia and or PA, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey dominate with 73% of jobs. Even though everybody moved away out of those states, and then recent tech roles like IT and all this is where the AI data-driven jobs are headed. So we've got people like Tate giving some accurate representations of what we see, but you can't deny the facts here, folks. You can't deny the data. The data is the data. What we see is that jobs are weakening and they're being taken off job boards because people are trying to go onto them left and right. But in reality, they aren't hiring. Then we're seeing housing crash. And then we're seeing college graduates, young men with college degrees, having the lowest percentage of jobs that they've ever seen ever in history. So we need to keep a close eye on how this pans out over time. And it's going to be something that I'm going to be detailing very closely on this channel. So make sure you guys are smoking that like, hitting the subscribe button, telling a friend to tell a friend, hit the bell notifications, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.